A brief introduction and introduce Nicole. So I'm Sarah. I work with Sustainable Cape. We're a small nonprofit in Truro, and we do a lot of work in the community, all focused on local food and the importance of local food and the connection between local food, our health and our wellness and our bodies, and then the link with our environment and really doing everything we can to preserve the fragile environment and ecosystem here, and then rippling that message out everywhere we can. So we work a lot with local farmers, supporting them in a variety of ways, and also doing a lot of educational work in the local elementary schools. So we have a Farmer in the School program at P-Town Elementary, at Truro Elementary, at Wellfleet, and soon at Eastham. And then I'm the farmer at the library at Truro. We do an after-school program at the Children's Community Garden at Truro Library. That will be starting up soon in March. So definitely spread the word. Super fun to just have kids of all ages come, learning about their bodies, their health, and really doing everything involved in growing food. So learning how to grow food from seed, taking care of the soil, taking care of the plants, picking the food. Hi, welcome. So we do this program from January through June. It's our Harvest Highlight Series. It's a total of 8 workshops where we have a local chef or someone passionate about local food come and do a demonstration. And there's a sister program that connects the programs where we buy $425 worth of a local crop every month. So this month we purchased $425 of Uli's mushrooms, and then we gave all that food to 3 community kitchens. So we do that every month, and then that crop, that food, is highlighted here with our local chef. So I'm super excited to have Nicole Cormier here. Nicole is a anti-diet dietitian. She's passionate about food and local food and does a ton of collaborations here on the Outer Cape. She has a nutrition therapy practice called Delicious Living Nutrition, and definitely check her out on Instagram and Facebook, and check out her website. Nicole is doing all kinds of incredible work. She's also an herbalist, and at the moment studying to become a clinical herbalist. So she brings a wealth of knowledge and passion, and it's a real honor to have her here talking about some of her own familial roots, coming from her family coming from Italy. She's going to do an Italian-inspired polenta today and use some really luscious local food. So please come with your questions, ask as she's going, be as involved and as engaged as you'd like. And at the end, definitely stick around because you're going to be able to taste what she's made. So let's welcome Nicole.
Thank you for coming, everyone. I'm really excited to share a little food experience with you on this beautiful Saturday. I did some of the prep work ahead of time, but I'll talk through it and we can have a discussion about any of the ingredients that I'm sharing today. I am mostly Italian. That was like a big thing growing up. I was very proud to say that I was half Italian, quarter French, quarter Irish. However, all of the women in my life, every single one of them in my family is 100% Italian. So I'm the only one that's not. So I grew up around several different Italian mentors in the kitchen. My parents growing up, they got divorced when I was an infant stage and both got remarried, and my father married 2 Italians. So my mom, and then I had a stepmom that was Italian too. So I had 2 very large Italian families from my mom's side and my stepmom's side. And we used to have these big family reunions every year that I would meet Italians from like across the state and the region that I would only see once a year, but they were so inspiring to me always with the food and with bringing like every family brought their different recipes and we would share, and they made this beautiful cookbook. So that was something that I grew up just around. I would say I'm not like a recipe person. I'm always looking for ways to be creative and to really make the kitchen more therapeutic. And that comes from my nutrition therapy practice, where I've been a registered dietitian for 20 years, seeing clients individually, and always just so curious after listening in all of these different sessions of, myself and my clients being vulnerable about, what does it feel like in your kitchen, and what are maybe some of the things that feel amazing in the kitchen, but what are some of the things that come up that don't feel so great in the kitchen. And so we all have these like messages and belief systems that start when we're in our developmental years, and those travel through us to our adult selves. And as we notice different sensations that come up when we're in different environments, it might be extremely valuable information for us to explore a little bit, so that you can keep cultivating your own nutrition practice. Like, no matter what culture we're from, things get passed down, but then we get to decide through our personal experience what we want to innovate from there. So I love that. I actually studied a little bit of that in psychotherapy, which I incorporate into my nutrition practice, but also studying some ethnobotany as well. So the interaction between plants and people offer just like what happens when things are passed down to each other. So growing up in an Italian family and having digestive issues since I was in elementary school really made it very challenging for me, because I had a lot of family members really wanting to play that role with me of eat my food to show me love. And that's like a really common practice, but I had to like kind of find my way through all of that. And so a lot of the things that were bothering me growing up were definitely started with a bunch of different processed foods, but then really kind of got into a weaker digestive system. So I started off with not like a robust gut microbiome. And from there, just growing up in the 80s and coming home after school and having like snacks, but then having this like Italian family that also cooked. I was in both worlds. So my digestive system was compromised a bit and it was weakened. And then when I would have like too much gluten, etc., I would just have like these really awful belly aches and really feel stuck as a child of like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I'm trying to make Nani happy, but I'm really sick right now. So I did get caught in some of those situations, but and this is why I love my practice so much, is just like sharing my story with some other clients that may have experienced that type of thing. We're really able to build back and work the gut microbiome up and really heal it so that we can enjoy pretty much most foods unless there's a true allergy. So like it's just fascinating how that works. And plants are what get us there. So like learning all of these different benefits of the plants and the vitamins and minerals and phytochemicals that make up their color, that's what's going to repair us. Especially our digestive system. So if you eat the same foods all the time, we're going to weaken our digestive system. But if we eat a variety, a robust amount of color, then we're going to really strengthen and get our gut microbiome to be resilient again. So that's my relationship with Italian food from like the beginning. But then I recently found out, not super recently, a few years ago, found out like all the different regions I was from. Like I did go to Italy when my Nana was alive. It was my mom, my Nana, my aunt, and we all went to the different areas of Italy, and we got to try the different regions of foods, but northern was really, it called to me, and I found out that's exactly where our family is from. So Piedmont is where I'm from, which I find really interesting because that's where polenta comes from. And that's just like my favorite thing growing up. Even when we would go into the north end as a family growing up, I would like every single time get a polenta dish. So it definitely is a favorite of mine, but it's also just naturally gluten-free. Corn wasn't cultivated in Italy forever. It actually was first planted in the 1500s, and it came from Turkey. Some historians have said. So it's interesting that like the polenta also like was brought into the country, and then it became this big thing. And even like people that lived in northern Italy were called the polenta eaters. And corn up in northern Italy becomes more like that bright yellow color versus other parts. So that's like one distinct thing. And the corn that we're having today is from the Dexter grist mill, which is an organic corn that is grown in New England, in New York, and then brought down to the grist mill, and they grind it every year. It's the sandwich rec department that runs that grill. It's really fascinating, and you can buy 2-pound bags of it, which is great. There's also a couple other mills. What's the one in Brewster? Stony Brook, yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, I don't know like the schedule of that mill, but I do know that like Sandwich is very active, and a lot of other chefs on the Cape use it as well. So we are using an organic cornmeal today that's from the region. But going back to Italy a little bit, it was used in so many different ways. There was a couple different ways that it was prepared. I'll show you my favorite way of preparing it, but sometimes it was creamy, and they would just put it on the dish and make a little circle in the center, and it would just hold the sauce, whatever sauce you wanted to put on it, whatever proteins. I did create a handout just because whenever I'm approaching any type of program or meal, I'm always looking for a tool to send off to perhaps think about assembling a meal a little differently, not overcomplicating things. And so that's where we came up with the pasta bowl. It's almost like a chart. It has categories. But in Italy, or especially northern Italy, you'll find more of the proteins would be like rabbit, fish, venison, veal. Those would be, and mushrooms, a lot of mushrooms in northern Italy. But those would be the protein choices. Those aren't listed here. I just chose a few different ones that maybe were more common. But you can do, the idea is that polenta is so versatile, and you can make it a part of a really nutrient-dense, balanced meal that's going to help you balance your blood sugars, your energy levels, and your hunger. And it doesn't have to be complicated, and it can be super delicious and be really packed with some health benefits that are going to be great for your immune system, your digestive system, and there's a couple ingredients up here that I'll go into a little bit more detail of like their heart health components to them too, with being able to lower or decrease our lipid fats. So these are, I have a pasta one too, because we're doing the pasta party at the Truro Elementary School. So I'm the registered dietitian for the Truro Elementary School as well. So I'll create things like this for families. I'll also walk around the cafeteria and talk to the kids during their lunchtime to, again, do the same thing of having them identify where their proteins are and where their fiber is. So even if we were to like simplify these categories even a step further, when we have protein and fiber together, they act as a partnership, and they slow the rate of the food turning into blood sugar. And then that supports our pancreas to produce insulin that picks up all the vitamins and minerals from all of these amazing nutrients up here and actually makes the delivery out to the rest of our body. So just taking a pause and looking at your meal and identifying proteins and fibers can be a really great strategy for supporting your digestion because you're taking a pause. That's really important for our nervous system. So we just want to, I'm planting seeds here because the experience of a meal is a real opportunity for you to connect with yourself, not just the food, but also like supporting your digestion and like your overall health. But our nervous system plays a huge role in that, and I think that's our biggest challenge today, which probably is very different from, you know, living in a little village in Piedmont, Italy, and going to pick my, pick up my eggs from the neighbor and like some other local ingredients. But we have busy schedules. And so with that comes like an activated nervous system and more sympathetic fight or flight. That's where we're typically are throughout the day. So before a meal, it can be really crucial to get yourself into a rest and digest state, which may have been natural at some points in life, but it's not necessarily a natural state to be in. So to take the extra effort and to take a couple deep breaths before your meal actually helps. So just even as I'm cooking and talking today, if you want to practice before you taste today's sample, just breathing so that your abdomen is rising and falling and your chest is like staying the same. You can breathe in for 4 counts, hold a couple, and then breathe out. Easy, simple way, teach it to kids all the time. And it can really help us drop into that rest and digest. Some of the ingredients, so this is just, again, a great tool if you think about just assembling one thing from each of these categories together. It can just really add a lot of different phytochemicals and vitamins and minerals because you're adding like different things, and it can be a fun system for you. Does anyone have any questions about this handout?
Well, I'm just wondering, for herbs, I just made something with farro and celeriac and dill, but you don't list dill on here. Is that because you don't like it?
No, that dill's great. Yeah, it's not on the page, but it can easily, all herbs are wonderful. There's no herb that isn't.
Okay, thanks.
I wanted to just make sure, yeah, so how I chose to do the polenta today was, this is kind of my go-to way. And so I try to make a big batch at a time because it is something that you can definitely like ingredient prep and keep in the refrigerator. And then you can put an egg with some vegetables with it, or you can put any other protein and vegetables with it, and it makes a really easy meal. I like to, basically you do need to dedicate some time. I have found a couple tricks though, because when you put it over the stove in like a larger pot, you're going to follow the instructions for a recipe. Usually it is similar to rice, so 1-to-2 ratio, but you could, play around with that if you have a recipe that you want to follow and it adds different things than just water. For today's purpose, I made it dairy free, so there's just like some salt and pepper and seasoning with water. And you have to stir it one batch for about 40 minutes. So it's a commitment, but it might be that day's meditation possibly, and that could be great because when we're meditating, we're just like allowing our thoughts to come out and then bringing ourselves back to what we're currently doing in that present moment. So making polenta is actually really great for that if you want to practice that. The next step that I do is just putting it out on either a baking sheet or a casserole dish and then letting it cool. So then it will cool like in a tray and just it like kind of solidifies. So this is a way to have a different texture than the creamy that you would have immediately. Do you have a question?
Sometimes I use that for my macaroni.
Yeah, it's the same food group. That's wonderful. Yeah, so this is a grain, just like macaroni would be a grain. I really like doing it like this and keeping it in the refrigerator that way, because you can just do whatever you want with it. You could make it into smaller chunks. You could make it, I like to cut it into squares and then just pan sear it on each side to let it crisp up. Yeah, and then put an egg on top. It's really great. So I'm just gonna flip this. I put a little hard thing over it. Usually I'll just do a cutting board and then I'll just do a flip. So hopefully it goes well, we'll see. I'm gonna do the flip. And the flip, it worked, okay. Just gonna put this in here real quick. So now we can just go ahead and, sorry for the awkwardness, but I'm just gonna cut it into squares for us. I might drop a couple pieces. Sometimes I like to make it a little thicker than this, but you can play around with it, whatever makes sense for you. But I'm gonna just cut it into squares.
Do you put any butter or ghee or olive oil when you?
You can. I used olive oil for the purpose of today. Sometimes I use butter, sometimes I use ghee. It just depends, but I wanted to make it dairy free, just in case.
In
And-
the
yep.
north, how often do they put cheese in it?
A lot.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah. I mean, a lot of the recipes that I read had some beautiful cheese on there. So I think it's a great addition to it. The serving size for polenta is I like to say a half a cup to a cup. So again, putting it into these squares, depending on how thick they are, can just be a really nice fit for a dish. So I wanted to heat, I'll try to heat those up for us. And then we got some really amazing, these are oyster mushrooms from Uli. Who's had oyster mushrooms from Uli before? Great, awesome. So they're they're special. Well, you're gonna have them today if you want to try them.
Delicious.
And they're really special. I mean, I'm a mushroom forager and I love getting all the mushrooms that we have on the Cape. And I've heard that mushrooms are relatively easy to grow, and you can get even kits from Uli sometimes at the farmers markets. He'll inoculate some of the logs for you, which is really cool. Or you could learn to do it yourself. But I like to support Uli and his mushroom projects for sure.
We'll actually be back at the Orleans Winter Farmers Market, which is on Saturdays from 10 to 12 on Main Street in Orleans. We'll be back in March.
Oh, great.
With oysters.
Excellent.
And then, of course, we'll be at the Truro and Orleans and Wellfleet Farmers Market through the spring, summer, fall with a variety of mushrooms.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, so mushrooms are known to have some vitamin D levels in them, depending on how they're grown. So if they're exposed to sunlight, they actually absorb vitamin D really well. So they can be a good source of vitamin D. The time of year, it might change that because of our vitamin D exposure in New England is different than a lot of other places. But couple of the things that I love about mushrooms so much is they are really connected to our immune system and inflammation. So they're great modulators for inflammation and for our immune system, which is they're helping to strengthen our immune system and decrease inflammation in the body. So when we choose to incorporate them, they can be great. And they're all different. So many mushrooms out there. If you've had, not so great experience with them, try to have a new experience and see if you can shift that, because they really have a lot of benefits for us. So I'm just going to cut I have minimal space up here, but I think that keeping it simple, and again, that's my style. I do, fancy dinners and supper clubs, using like local and foraged ingredients in town. But always one common thing is just keeping it super simple. You don't have to overcomplicate it. Let the ingredients tell the story sometimes, and practice connecting to those ingredients and just see what happens. You might be really surprised. So these are pretty easy I'm gonna try to keep them like kind of whole in pieces, and we're just gonna do a nice saute with them. I've done them in the oven. You can do whatever works, but I am gonna save these, because can anyone guess what I'm gonna do with these? Yes. Yes, I am going to make a broth with them. So I like to save all of my scraps when I'm cooking, and I'll keep them if I don't have enough to fill a stock pot just yet with some filtered water, I will put it in the freezer. So I'll just like have a container and keep a bunch of scraps in the freezer until I'm ready to add water. And then you have your own vegetable broth. You could also make a bone broth and add all your veggie scraps to that. And we're lucky that right in Truro we have Drew that raises pasture-raised chickens. So I usually get a bunch of chickens from him at one time, and then I'm able to make my own bone broth for like a big supply, depending on how much I want to make. And bone broth freezes really well. You can also preserve it in other ways if you were interested. But the reason why I love bone broth is because it can really help repair the mucosal lining and the digestive system. And today, like not just based on my previous personal experience that I shared with digestion and really having to take the time to figure out how to build up my own gut microbiome so that I could enjoy more of a diverse ingredient profile, as I come across all of these amazing local foods that we have. Just want to be able to enjoy all of them. So I totally forgot what I was saying. It's okay, we'll just go back to the mushrooms. So mushrooms are the broth. So the bone broth really does, like when you put different ingredients in like ginger or bay leaf, the medicinal plants that are gonna add to your broth and really pull out the minerals from the bones. When you sip on that broth or cook with that broth, it's gonna really help heal and put back together some of your mucosal lining of your digestive tract. So it's just like one extra thing that can be in the kitchen that you can easily use polenta with. So moving on so I'm gonna save these for my vegetable broth or a bone broth. And we're gonna just start sauteing the mushrooms here, I think. Function. So we're just looking for like a sear. I'm just doing olive oil, salt, and pepper because then we have this opportunity to really connect with the flavors that are coming just out of the mushrooms. And like I mentioned before, all mushrooms are different. So some of them are going to have different textures, different flavors. Some are more mild. Some of them have more of an earthy flavor to them. And so the way that we're gonna really make this dish pop is with roasted garlic. So roasted garlic, honestly, I love just roasting it whole. I've worked with so many chefs in town and we've done so much garlic that I try to get out of peeling individual cloves of garlics any chance that I get. So just a very simple way is to leave it whole, cut it in half, and roast it. And then we can just pull out with a spoon or a fork, like the roasted garlic that we're going to add to the mushrooms after we're done.
Can I
And
ask,
yes.
how long does it take to roast?
It depends on how many vegetables you're roasting at one
Oh,
time.
yeah.
Like what else do you have in there? So if I'm going to take the time to roast the garlic, then I'm going to maybe do a variety of different vegetables at the same time, so
Right.
then I can
Yeah.
have those ingredients prepped in the refrigerator. Did you have a question? No, I just saw some. Okay. I'm like, really? Yes.
Can you pre-roast and then refrigerate it? So you
Yeah.
have inventory and stuff?
It's my favorite thing to do.
You
Yeah.
freeze
And what?
it? You refrigerate it or?
Yeah. Yeah, it just depends. It depends on what you're going to do with it. You know, it's better to cook it than to leave it too long and let it start breaking down in your refrigerator. So just pull out your ingredients and either saute or roast, and then you can freeze or put it back in the refrigerator. And now you can use the chart to like assemble. So then, like, the goal is like, what would it feel like if we opened our refrigerator and there was a couple different proteins already made, a couple different like grains, and then a bunch of vegetables. You could put together many different meals just with assembling because you did that a little bit of prep work ahead of time. I'm gonna try not to do the smoke alarm. So I seasoned this pan very well prior because I was cooking other mushroom called the lion's mane. But I'm going to add a little bit more. So seasoning, and I'm not used to this, okay. I'm smelling like I need to turn it down. Intuitive cooking. So we'll get these like a little crispy. I like to just saute them until most of the sides they're gonna release their own liquid. So I'm just adding the olive oil with a little bit of salt and pepper. The salt will actually draw some of the water out as well, and it will bring out the flavor. And I will do a little pepper, but not too much. This is my favorite pan. It's a very large skillet, but cast iron is my favorite to cook in for a couple different reasons. They're really easy to take care of. You just need to make sure that you're seasoning them. So after you use it, you wipe it down. Sometimes I'll give it a quick rinse, and then I will put a little bit of water and just heat it up on the stove. And then discard that and make sure I just put a little bit more olive oil down before I put it away so it stays nice and seasoned. But there's multiple, if you have a cast iron that you feel is just ruined, don't throw it out. There's so many ways that you can bring them back to life and re-season them. All right, actually, I am going to add a tiny bit of water, so I'll be right back. So sometimes if you feel like the pan, because I have such a big pan going on here, if I feel like I have, they're getting a little dry and I don't want to add more olive oil just yet, I'll just add a little bit of water. And so that will keep them hydrated, but not too much because I still want them to get kind of crispy. If that works. Yeah. Okay. Any questions about the oyster mushrooms? Yep. Or anything? Yes.
My mom's making chicken soup.
Beautiful. That's
It's
gonna
like
be the
chicken soup.
broth.
Yes,
What are the vegetables that you're excited about that will be in it?
well, it's chicken, carrots,
Carrots
fennel.
and fennel. Yum. So fennel's an amazing ingredient. I mean, it has a lot of medicinal properties to it, but it's really good for our digestion too. So that's going to be a really nice soup. Believe it or not, you can still find carrots on Cape Cod right now. And winter carrots are actually my favorite because they are harvested when it's still cold and the carrot has like kind of captured its sugars. So when you harvest and eat the winter carrots, oftentimes they can taste more sweet. So I'm going to give you a raw carrot today on your, so you can connect with.
Are they from a farmer's
I
market?
love
So these are, so Prior Dog Farm is down in Falmouth, so you'll find them at the Falmouth Farmers Market. I know it's quite a distance from here. However, I did take a road trip and I do think it's worth it. And it's really a straight shot. It's like an L shape. So you just go like straight down Route 6 and take a left and you're at the market in an hour and a half. But they have these great carrots there. And so Prior Dog has the carrots. Yep.
Yeah, what else did you find there when you went?
Yeah, so I found these sprouts there. So there's a couple women growing a bunch of different sprouts. So there's radish sprouts. There are some pea sprouts, some beet sprouts. I was able to find those. The turnips, so purple top turnips, is also Prior Dog Farm. There's a couple different like sourdough, not a couple. There's one amazing sourdough baker that goes to that market that is really quite the artisan with her loaves.
What's the name of
The market,
the market?
just a Falmouth Winter Farmers Market. Yep. It's on Sundays noon to 3. Yep.
There's also one in Philly.
Yeah, it's really I found it to be very, very lovely to attend. So these are going really nicely. I think once they get a little bit more done, I will add the polenta to the pan. So I'll try to get a little bit of a sear on our polenta squares.
Do you cook them on low or like medium low?
This is a different process for me because I would normally bake them in the oven for 400 degrees because I love putting things in the skillet and then just throwing it in the oven. That's like my favorite thing
So
to
you
do.
do them on the skillet a little bit and then put them in the oven?
I'll just put the olive oil and then I'll just throw it in the oven at 400 until they're crisp and look great.
That way.
Yeah. But this is an induction burner, so I cook with gas at my house. But it seems, I forget, what was your question? What?
Temperature.
Oh, the temperature. So I have this
Sorry.
on 340 degrees.
Okay. I'm happy to know to put them in the oven.
I think you can just,
Yeah.
what I would recommend is like medium
Yeah.
medium to high heat so that you can get it high enough to get a little crisp if you're looking for that.
Okay.
If you're not, then
That's how I usually do it.
Yeah.
You know, if you nutritionally do it a different way.
no, I mean that's like a tricky question, like because I do get asked that quite a bit. Like, what is the best way to prepare? It's however you want to in that moment. Like, don't take away your creative process to follow instructions because that actually is going to do the opposite of what we're really trying to do, is to connect with our meal and all of the different parts of our health practice. And sometimes the process alone is therapeutic and will help our nervous system. So if we're like activating ourselves because we want to make sure we're doing things the best way, it comes back to us.
The burn part on the bottom of the can is always the favorite.
What's that?
The burn part on the bottom of the can is always the favorite.
Always your favorite.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
break it out.
That's what you like.
Fight over it. You
Yeah.
know?
Who was doing
Well, it's not burned, but it's cooked.
No, it's like, it has a lot of
It's
flavor
like the
to
bottom,
it.
the bottom of a paella or something.
Yeah. I mean, if we have things that are like really, really burnt, you know, like on the grill and whatnot, like char, like that can have some carcinogens to it. But if we're like sauteing and not burning things, you're gonna get like the nutritional value. And the cool thing is that when we process plants, different things come out of them. So sometimes, like when we're processing tomato, there's lycopene that comes out in higher amounts, and that's the phytochemical. That's one of the phytochemicals. So when you're cooking different things, like I do get asked a lot, like should I be following a all raw diet? And I think it's up to the person. But I think it's really important to keep in mind that you want to get all of the benefits of all the plants, and keeping a variety and like a variety of the ways that you consume it, new experiences, is a really, really essential part of the process. And everybody's nutrition practice is different. Yeah.
Just one more word just on getting local ingredients. I know we had mentioned the Orleans Winter Market, but I just want to reiterate, every Saturday is from 10 to 12, and if you get there early, there's actually a decent amount of food to access. So Sealand Meadow is there with a variety of cuts of beef and lots of bones, so if you're interested in bone broth. Nicole had mentioned Hillside Poultry. Drew is there. He's actually standing outside with his chickens. There's a fishing family there with some interesting fish. Like I got some sea bass, frozen sea bass there last week, lots of scallops. And then if you go inside, if you get there early, you can get some greens and carrots and maybe turnips. So definitely check it out if you haven't yet been.
Is it the same place as it is in the summer?
No, so in the winter, if you are standing at the Orleans, if you're looking at the Orleans Health Food Store on Main Street, it's just to the left, that little park where the community center is. It's actually inside that little community center. Yeah, so right on Main Street, next to the wine shop and the cheese shop. Definitely worth going. And then tomorrow at Wellfleet Press Hall, there's a pop-up market from 10 to 1. So just check it out. I don't know who's going to be there, but there's a bunch of vendors.
Thank you.
Yes.
And if everyone got the newsletter, the February mushroom newsletter, that also has the farmers market details on the back, along with the nutrition incentive programs that Sustainable Cape helps offer at the market. So I'm just over here flipping polenta into the pan, just to get it a little warmed up for us. Again, you don't need to. You can have it chilled. It's absolutely delicious chilled, but I figured we have this big skillet today, so we might as well use it. So I'm just going to heat up these, and then we'll start plating, because what we're doing is we're assembling, just like the handout described. Yes.
Can you go over how you made that polenta to begin with?
Yeah, so I thought I did, but
Did you? I'm sorry.
so basically, so you want to find a recipe, because it is like a 1-to-2 ratio, similar to what rice would be. But you can decide what you want to put in it, if you want to add herbs or a milk or cream or butter, or this was just water, olive oil, herbs, and cornmeal from the Dexter grist mill in Sandwich. And you can buy 2-pound bags of it from the Sandwich Rec Department. And sometimes there's some stores that sometimes carry it around here. And so it's gonna take per batch about 40 minutes. You do have to constantly stir. It's like that dedication, but we were saying it could be a meditation for the day of just sitting at the stove for about 40 minutes and just dedicating to the stir of it. I have stumbled upon a couple tips where I made polenta in my crock pot once and was able to, it really worked out very nicely because it kept it at a low temperature that it wasn't burning the bottom and I had to stir less.
Rice cooker.
So, or you could try the rice cooker. I'm not sure. I would make sure it would be not on a boiling setting.
They have all different,
Settings.
settings on them.
Great.
Yeah.
So maybe a rice cooker.
Yeah, I make grits all the time, which is very similar. to
Very
them.
similar.
Yeah.
Great. Good to know. So maybe a rice cooker.
And then you pour it into the pan.
And then I just pour it into whatever I want, and you just let it cool, and then it congeals itself. Yep. And then it becomes this texture versus before it was just very different, more like a porridge. And now we have this like gluey square that you'll be able to try. With the mushrooms, so we'll top the mushrooms on with the olive oil, salt, and pepper, lots of garlic. And so the garlic, I did, because Sarah did mention that I'm also an herbalist, I've been working very hard on some assignments, so I